Dear students, today we are going to talk about the second experiment which was conducted at Hawthrone Studies, the Western Electric Company. The experiment is a relay assembly test room experiment which was conducted from 1927 to 1928. The purpose of this experiment was to determine the effect of changes in various working conditions or job conditions on productivity. Remember, before this we have talked about the illumination experiment, in which it was assumed that the intensity of light will have a significant impact on the production or productivity of the worker, which turned out that there wasn't any influence at all. So the experiment failed. Now that was where the story of assembly relay experiment started. It motivated research now to find out, if we change the working conditions or job conditions, what will be the influence on productivity? If light did not have any influence, let us now experiment with this. Who were the subjects? The second thing, we have talked about the purpose, that the purpose is to determine the effect of changes on the various working conditions or job conditions on productivity. Important thing here is that two girls were recruited or chosen who were working on the assembly of telephone relays, and they were asked to choose another four girls. The two girls chosen are asked to, these two girls are asked to choose another four girls for this experiment. And this experiment was conducted in a test room. Suppose this is the test room. This experiment was conducted in this test room. What were the conditions? Before conducting the experiment, the output of these four girls was measured secretly and it was recorded. The output was measured and recorded. To find out what is the influence of the change in the working conditions on the productivity, it was important for researchers to know that what was the productivity beforehand, before beginning the experiment. Second important condition was that an observer was posted in the test room with the girls. In this room, an observer was posted who was assisting and observing these girls. 6 girls were there now in the room. 6 girls in this test room working on assembly of telephone relays. Now the third important condition, the girls were told to work in the natural way. They were told to work naturally as they are, working normally in any natural way, without any stress, without any influence, and just work informally. Another important thing, which is significant condition from the previous experiments which Taylor and his associates did, was that the girls were allowed to freely comment about the arrangements. Now there were different arrangements made, changes made. The girls were given the opportunity to express their viewpoint, their concerns with the research team whenever there was a briefing. So every time a change was brought in, there was a briefing. The girls were beforehand told that now we are going to bring in the change, or after the change was brought, they were being consulted. The consultation with the girls, the workers, who in this case are the 6 girls, was being done. Another important thing, in some cases, these girls were given the freedom to take the decisions on the matters which were concerning them. Not the organization or the department, the matters which were of their concern. Now the third important thing after the fourth one is the changes. What are the changes which were brought in? Number one is group incentives were brought in. An incentive scheme was brought in for these 6 girls, which means that a scheme that these 6 girls were given an opportunity to earn extra incentives, which we called as group incentives, right? So these 6 girls are eligible for a group incentive. So the incentive a girl in this group will earn will depend upon the performance or the output of the 5 girls. Not whole department, not whole team, but this 6. That is the group incentive. Now once this group incentive was bought in, what happened to the production? It increased. It increased. Fine. Production increased. Second change was the 5-minute rest period was introduced. 2 rest periods were given, one in the morning, one in the evening, and the performance was measured. The production increased again. Then this was changed to 10-minute rest period. The performance again increased. This was the second change. That with respect to the first change was group incentives were changed. Second was rest periods. 2 rest periods were bought, 5 minutes each, one in morning, one in evening, and performance increased. They were then changed to 10-minute rest period, one in morning, one in evening, performance increased. The third change which was bought was the rest period was now again brought back from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. But the frequency was increased. If it was for 2 times earlier, now it was, for example, 5 times or 6 times. Here, the opposite happened. The performance decreased. The performance decreased. Unusual thing. Now here, after the performance was decreased and consultation briefing was happened, the girls complained that they lost the rhythm in their activity. This frequent rest period led them to lose the rhythm in their working style. That is the reason the performance has decreased. Fair enough. This was fine, right? It was quite understood that if you give more breaks to these girls, they will lose the rhythm, which ultimately will have an influence on their productivity. It was fine with researchers to conclude that the rest periods which were bought in of 5 minutes but with increased frequency of maybe a number of times 5, 6, 7, 8 in a day, they lead to more disturbance for these girls, and that ultimately led to the decrease in their productivity. Fair enough. The fourth condition now, which was bought in, is that now again 2-minute breaks were introduced, one in morning, one in evening, with addition that they were being given coffee, soup in the morning, and sandwich in the evening. With the break, they were being served snacks. That is morning, either coffee or soup, evening, sandwich. Again, performance increased. Fair enough. Fifth condition or change or treatment. Now, change in the working hours and working week was done. Number 1, reduced working hours. For example, in a day, if the girls used to work for 8 hours, they were just left 1 hour early. That is, they will work only for 7 hours. So reducing the work hour per day. 1 hour early they were left, and performance was again measured. It increased. Second change was that reducing the number of working days. If the girls used to work for 6 days a week, it was changed to 5 days. So they were now being asked to work for only 5 days. Again, the performance increased. This was being monitored, and it was seen that performance increased. From this, it was concluded now. The researchers concluded that, the conclusion I have mentioned here, it was assumed that these positive factors which were introduced, like incentive, rest period with snacks, change in working hours, all these positive factors influence the productivity of the workers. This was the conclusion. Fair enough, until this fine. Now, a significant change, the sixth change which marked the dramatic shift in the thinking of the researchers, was the sixth change. Before that, I just want to clarify, whenever there was a change introduced, whenever the change or the treatment was done, the previous or old privilege or the treatment, say a break, a snack, or maybe a incentive, was not removed, it was retained. For example, this 10-minute break with tea, coffee, soup, it was kept as it is. The next change was that working hours was shortened. So these changes were kept as they are, right, until now. After this, another change was done in this experiment, that all the changes, all the privileges were removed at once. So the break, incentive, the working hour change, everything is removed, and now the productivity is monitored. Surprisingly, this time also productivity increased. Productivity still increased when it should have decreased, because I have deduced here that these positive factors which I have introduced have an influence on productivity. I have seen that. I give them more rest periods, I give them incentives, productivity increase. I give them reduced working hours, reduced working week, productivity increase. But when I remove all these incentives, all these privileges, I see that productivity still increases, surprisingly. So now this nowhere stands. My conclusion is nowhere true now, because this has proved me wrong. What happened now is that this led to change in the thinking of these researchers. They started to think, what is happening, man? I gave them more money, productivity increased. Now I give them what they used to get before. Now still the productivity increased. What is motivating them? What is happening? What is actually happening? This caused a significant shift in the thinking of these researchers. So they concluded this thing, that productivity increased not because of the positive changes, the positive factors which were introduced, but because of the change in the girls' attitude towards the work and the work group. This change was not because of the positive factors we have brought in, not because of all these factors. This is nowhere true. This is all because there was change in the attitude of these 6 girls. Remember, when these 2 girls were recruited, they were asked to choose another 4. Obviously, when 2 girls are being asked to choose, say for example from you, I will ask you to choose another 2 people. Whom you will choose? You will choose another 2 or 4 who are like-minded, who are similar in your temperament, with whom you have more bonding. Right? It is quite obvious that you will choose them. So what has happened? This has become a social group, and this social group has taken the group pride. They have taken, वो बोलते हैं ना कश्मीरी में, इल्शान शिपानस पर प्यावान सुच काड़न ये कलते पाने. So they have taken this as a social group, and there were significant other changes which have happened, like they were given autonomy. They were being consulted whenever a change was made. Whenever I changed the work week, I was consulting them. Whenever I give them more breaks, I consulted them. Now I am going to introduce this change. And after this, I was asking their feedback, their comments, their viewpoints. So I was it was kind of a participative thing. I was involving them, I was asking them the queries, I was asking for their feedback, which earlier did not happen. Earlier, whatever decision manager or management was making, it was forced upon the workers. But here, there was a significant drift that these were consulted. They even took the decisions. If you remember in the last slide, I have mentioned that they even took the decisions which were of their concern. So this has led to the change in the attitude of these girls towards the work and towards the work group, the group they were working in. This experiment was repeated again with 5 men, and the change made was incentives. Production was increased 13%. Here the production increased 30%. Here the production increased 13%. This was again this experiment was now done again repeated with 5 girls, but here all the 5 girls were chosen, and they were not a cohesive group. They were different in temperament. Now earlier I would say that a team worked hard because they were like-minded people, temperament. No, now here what the researchers did, they choose 5 girls which were different in their temperament, and they were being put in the team, and again the performance increased with every change, and it was 15%. Right? Even when the privileges were withdrawn, performance increased. What is the outcome? Outcome of this experiment is that now this team, the 5 girls which we have recruited, which are different in temperament, they have formed a work group, a cohesive work group, which was not before cohesive, but they have formed the work group, which is a social group. They liked the feeling of being important and the stability. They like the interactions, cooperations, values, and norms they have developed in this social group. When we have a group, for that group we have the members in that group will interact with each other, they will have bonding, they will share certain norms, certain values. So that is what has happened. The attention they have received from the researcher, from the observer, they were pleased with that. The recognition and participation, the efforts were recognized, their participation in the decisions and their consultation, the more freedom which they have received, all these things they have observed while at the work as a social group. So this has actually become an informal group which was formed, and this informal group has led to the work satisfaction of these work women, which was caused because of the freedom in the working environment, because they received more freedom in the working environment because of all these things, and because of all these things they led to the job satisfaction. This satisfaction actually led to their increase in productivity. This was the significant finding of Hawthrone studies, which laid out the foundation for the human relations, which laid out foundations for human relations approach. So apart from physical factors, which we thought that these physical factors at work, the working conditions and other things, will have influence on the job and the productivity of the employees, there was a human factor into it, which was the coming together of these 6 girls together, then forming an informal group, then developing the social group, then developing their norms, their values, then taking the pride. They like to be in the test room. They like to be observed. They like that they are given more freedom. They like that they are interacting, cooperating. They like the feeling of being important. They like the attention they have got. All that has led to the increased productivity, not the physical factors. Thank you very much. We'll look into the other two experiments in the next session.